tech story out of Minnesota. It's 26-year-old Charles McGregor, founder of Minnesota's only black-owned gaming development studio. Charles McGregor is a Minnesota-based entrepreneur, and he's in the gaming industry, and he's the man behind the state's first gaming studio. He's inked a deal with Xbox. He said the 26-year-old who owns the company Tribe Games developed a passion for video games at an early age. He says as a youngster, he became infatuated with how the games were created. McGregor's dad taught him about programming, and by the age of 11, he started to develop his own video games. And, Kori, I'm a data guy. We've had lots of data conversations, and interestingly enough, the African-American community, 73% of African-Americans over the age of 13, this is numbers and data from Nielsen, 73% of African-Americans over the age of 13, consider themselves to be gamers. That 73%. Like, I really didn't understand how into gaming we were until my former life at Nielsen, we started to break down some of the data. But here's the flip side of that. 73% of us consider ourselves to be gamers,
right.
but research also shows that only 3% of game developers are black.
Yes.
So that's why it's so rare when you actually get a black avatar, or you don't have black characters, or they're not black inspired or African inspired or diaspora inspired universes in games. And so this deal, I think, is really, really interesting because this guy says it's always been a dream of his to work with Xbox, to get his game in Xbox. And I think it's also interesting that this guy, 26 years old, did not just sell the company to Microsoft. He did a partnership agreement with them, and his game is going to be distributed. One of the games he created, Hyperdot, caught the attention of the folks at XBuy, and that particular game was acquired by the company, not his entire company. So he lives on as an entrepreneur to sell other games to other people and do the whole thing.
Well, what he's really done is cracked into a market that's worth about $116 billion when it comes to that indie game market. And what's even more fascinating about that is the discoverability process, right? Which is in more musical terms, right? That would be the distribution and the publishing, right? But specifically for video games. So when this young man, Charles McGregor, young 26, when this young man was able to ink this deal with Microsoft, I mean, what he's done is essentially unleashed a major marketing machine behind his video game, because he could be putting it out. There are tons of indie video games, right? About 70% of video games in the market right now are actually indie video games, but only 2% of those video games are really generating revenue to that $116 billion pot. So you got the big household names, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto, the list goes on and on. So this is a huge win. Can I just say, not just for the gaming industry, not just for video games, but it's a huge win for the culture to see one of us and something that we've created, right, perhaps with us in mind as a people, as a collective, being recognized by the tech conglomerates of the world.
Yeah, I mean, he also said to exactly to your point, Kori, that part of what he got from the relationship with Microsoft is he got the Microsoft marketing machine. Is that now the game becomes extremely popular and it becomes more widely available to tons of other people. There are a few black entrepreneurs who are out there in the gaming industry doing some pretty big things too. There's a Detroit native, Delane Parnell, who just launched an esports startup called PlayVS. They raised $50 million in September.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of black tech entrepreneurs raising $50 million.
Not at that level. And he's got some major backers from the likes of Diddy, major celebrity endorsers, of course, some major venture capitalists behind what he's doing. And PlayVS is super duper interesting because what they're able to do at his company is essentially take high schoolers, because that's their market, is focused on high schoolers, and creating this pipeline into college esports in the same way he's essentially the NCAA of e-gaming. Is what he's created. And I'm like, of course we would think of something like that.